Today we're going to do a little bit more work on our Scottish Gaelic Tattoo Handbook app. So let me show you what we have so far here. These are our storyboards that we've done so far. I will put a link in the description for a blog post where I describe all the work that we've done so far, which has been mostly UI work, but so that you can get an idea. Let me go ahead and run this on the simulator for you so that you get a taste of what we have done. Because today we're going to be switching gears a little bit. So this is what we have, right? We have these 4 tabs at the bottom. Pretty good. And then here on the home screen, you can scroll down and we've got a lot of the views kind of set up. They don't look exactly the way we want them to look according to the mockups, but they're there and they have approximately the right positioning relative to each other. So we're in a place where we can start to put some of the data on screen. And now that we're going to put data on screen, it's time to actually do some code writing of our own rather than just messing around in the storyboard. And the part that we're going to be doing today is going to be filling in the 3 most recent blog posts, which are supposed to appear on this home screen like this, as you can see in this mock-up right here, which I can't touch without pulling up the action sheet with a web view in it somehow. So let me talk to you a little bit about how this is going to work. So this is the site that we're getting the blog posts from, you can see. And we got this blog here. So we know that our 3 most recent posts are going to be this one, a medieval Gaelic word for tattooing, and then this Irish and Scottish Gaelic one, and then this one about the Gaelic film from Nova Scotia. So we're going to make sure that those are the 3 that we get that we're going to display on the home screen. So this, clearly this is a web page, and we could absolutely scrape it, but ideally we wouldn't have to scrape it. So I know that I said I was going to write all of the lines of code for this app on stream, and I will, but I cheated a little and I did a little research ahead of time for you so that we could get started right away today. And I'll show you exactly what it was. I went to a Google tab and I put in get posts from WordPress blog as JSON, and the first result said that you can add this piece of the URL to the end of your WordPress site URL, and it's going to give you a list of posts in JSON. So let's see if that's true. I'm going to copy that, and I come over here, and you can see that I do gaelic.co, and then when I paste that in, and I go, it does give me this JSON. Now it goes on to say the default number of posts returned is 10, but you can choose to show more or less with the per page argument. So what I want is the top 3. So we can actually make this a little bit less voluminous. And the way that we can do that is we can add a query parameter of per page. Let's see if this works. So it looks like there's a lot of stuff. Does it give me literally the whole post? I think it gives me literally the whole post. Wow. So the first thing that I notice about this JSON response is that it doesn't really have like a body. It's just an array, and there's a JSON object that comes back in it. So that's relevant to me because later when I am configuring Swift to be able to turn it from JSON into an object, I want to know that that's the case. So let's take a look here. It does look like we're getting the most recent one back first, because see, we have here a medieval Gaelic word for tattooing, and so the key rendered on this thing, title, has this object with the rendered attribute that appears to be what we're going to want for our home screen thing. Let's check that. Yeah. And then the picture, let's see how we can get the picture, because we want this picture of this, I guess it's feet. Let's see if we can get any information about the image. So I'm looking at, we see the slug. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit Command A, Command C, and then I'm going to go into a Scratch file. I'm going to use a different editor for this. Command Shift N. I want to make a JSON Scratch file. This is just to look at the JSON a little better. So this is all my JSON, and if I format it, I think it's just taking a second. We'll give that a second to format. There we go. Okay, what does it say? So it's an array. ID, date, blah, 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 blah. Modified, slug status, title. So this we want. And then it has content, which hopefully we don't have to fish the image out of there. Let's see what else we got here. Excerpt, rendered, protected. Okay. Author, featured media. I bet that has something to do with that image. I wonder how I can get that. And then it's got the categories, the tags. Oh, look, here's the featured media URL. So if I yank this, yeah, man's legs, blue abstract overlay compressed.jpg. That super looks like that's it. So I don't think this is going to work, but if we just go to it wholesale, it's not going to work. And the reason it's not going to work is because it has all this escape characters in it. I'm going to move you up here. It has all the escape characters in it. But if we were to unescape this, we should theoretically be able to use it. So for example, if I were to take out all these and then grab this and go to this, would it work? Yeah. Okay. So those are the two things we need. So let's see if we can go about getting them in our application. So now that we're writing the actual code, it's time for us to talk about testing. With Interface Builder, we don't end up testing our UI all that much because what we would essentially be doing in that case is testing the functionality of Interface Builder. But when it comes to writing code, we want to use tests to be able to verify that things are going to be working correctly, particularly at the seams where two APIs are coming together, two objects are working together. So in this case, we definitely have one of those situations insofar as that the code that we need to write is interfacing with this HTTP API that WordPress provides for us to be able to get the title and the featured image. So where are we going to start? Well, what I would like to do is start with a test that can verify that the thing is working. I'm going to show you exactly how we would go about driving that out. I'm going to show you an example in another application that I have, and then we're going to move that information over and modify it for our use case. So in our code here, we haven't really done a whole lot with the code yet. That's fine. So let's look at our tests here. So you'll notice we have this test file. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new one. And this is going to test specifically It's going to be a unit test case class, and it is going to be called our, ultimately we're going to make a service for this, so let's call it blog post service test. Cool. Great, and now I want to show you another, we'll give it a second. Yeah, so you'll see that we have similar service tests here. Essentially what this test is going to do is it's going to make sure that the API is operational, which has benefits and drawbacks. So the benefit here is that when we run this test, we know that our API has not changed and that it's going to work for us when we deploy the application. However, if something about the API has changed, this test will fail even though our application is not involved. Now, some people will refer to that as flakiness because it means that the test is failing when our code isn't broken. But I would actually push back on that because if our code isn't configured correctly to get the response that we're looking for from the API, then our app isn't going to look right regardless of whether or not it's our fault. So I still think this is a useful test. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to literally steal this. And we're going to get rid of all this. It's going to ultimately be mad because we don't have a third service in here. Let's get rid of this and make this XC test case. And then bird service, we're going to call this blog post service. We're going to change that everywhere. If it does not override any method from its superclass. Let's take a look at this, because I think the API may have changed a little bit for iOS 13.4. Use of undeclared type, we'll worry about that in a second. And it's not going to be birds, it's going to be a blog post. So I'm going to change birds to blog posts here. Blog posts. Blog posts. So now it's upset because we have this undeclared type blog post and this undeclared type blog post service. Let's change that. So we're going to make a new file. Not here. Here. It's going to be a Swift file. Blog post service. Class. And it doesn't do anything yet. Great. So now, if we back out of here and go to our test, this should ultimately go away. And then we also need a blog post class. So let's make another file. Blog post. This one's going to be a struct. We'll come back to this later. So then we have a struct, and it's called blog post. So let's take a look at our test again. I'm going to rerun it to get it to recompile. Or rather, rerun the test. Use of undeclared. Oh yeah, we have to do, so we have to import our test target. And it should be like that. Similar to over here, you'll see that we have that testable modifier on there. Ooh. These two words need to be switched. Let's try that. All right, so now we're in a better position because it's saying the object exists, but it doesn't have any method called get blog posts, which is good. Let's come over here and take a look at our bird service. So we're going to do a very similar setup to this. So I'm actually going to take a lot from here. First of all, I'm going to take my error handler. We'll worry about the name on that later. And then I'm going to take this part. In here, our URL is going to be this. Actually, take the whole thing like that. Cool. So now this needs to be blog posts, and this is going to be a blog post. We'll talk about what a blog post result is here in a second. Cool. So now let's go over to our blog post, and we're going to make another struct here. And we are going to have it implement a protocol called Codable. What this does is in Swift, it allows us to map to and from JSON. I'll show you an example. So if you look at our bird, you see we have our bird, it implements Codable, but then we also have this bird result. And it comes with this label on it. Now, the thing about the label is it's expecting bird result to come as an object, and ours is coming as a straight array right here. So we might have to research how to do that. Swift Codable, code unwrapped, please. See, it's expecting like an object at the top level. So actually I have a new idea. Rather than doing bird result, oh, wrong app. Rather than doing blog post result, we're going to do something else. We're going to make an array of blog posts. Watch this. Hopefully this works. Where does it say that? It's going to be like this. And it's saying the blog post needs to conform to decodable, which it gets by conforming to the codable protocol. So that looks good. Let's rename bird calling error to blog post calling error. And you'll notice that we have 3 different kinds: problem generating URL. This is if we have some issue with the URL that we're trying to get data from. Then we have problem getting data from API, which is if the URL is fine, but we're getting back a response we can't parse. And then problem decoding data is if we're getting back a response and it looks right until we try to decode into data and it's not working. Let's change the name of bird result to blog posts. And we're just going to send in blog posts, because that's going to be an array of blog posts, which is going to match the signature that is going to be expected that we have defined in our test. Right there. All right, so now if we run this, the build succeeds. The test should fail, though, still. We'll talk about why. Testing. Test succeeded. Let's take a look at what we're getting in our. It's upset about constraints. Let's take a look here. Wait for promise. Assert not nil blog posts. I want to assert some more stuff about the blog post, though. I want to make sure that it's getting the data properly. XCT assert equal blog posts dot size 3. I want to make sure that there are 3 of them. Let's see if this works. Why are you mad at me? Oh, because this is Swift. And you use count, not size, to determine the length of an array. Value of type. Why is it upset? Blog post. Oh, it's still. We gotta force it to recompile. So there's 3. It looks like there's 3 of them. Now, what do we need? We need the title, and we need the URL of the media. So let's look again at the structure here. So we need that Jetpack featured media URL and title. Now, let me show you in this example. We have these names. These, by default, need to match exactly what you're getting out of the JSON. But you can customize this. So let's take a look. Swift codable custom keys. Customize what keys? Codable used in the coding instances of our is to define a coding keys enum init and assign custom raw values. So this is what we want to do. We want an enum of coding keys, and let's get them. So, not here. Blog post. And ultimately we want, we want title, and we also want Jetpack featured media URL. So we're going to call this image URL. And then we want to get title, but here's the thing. I would rather not have to make a whole other object for the title in the rendered situation. So let's determine if we can do that. We can also set up our own decoding strategy to convert from snake case, which we would actually have to do here because the keys, as you can see, are snake cased. But we also want to get rid of this nested object. Let's say we're building an app that includes a currency conversion feature. We're downloading the exchange rates. And it looks like this. Oh, but they're making a structure that matches that one, which is not what I want. Wait, that may not be true. Currency, exchange rates. So the exchange rate is represented by this. Oh, I see what they're saying, because then they have two separate attributes here and they want to keep both of them. And so what they are doing is they're initializing it with and then they're mapping over the dictionary to get the keys and the values. So we could do something like that, I guess. But it seems like a lot, honestly. Let's try it and see what we think. So now we're going to make a bridge object. We'll come back to that. Let's do script title. And then we'll initialize it. Or what if we did something like this? So we could give it what it needs here, which is its rendered attribute. Which is going to match exactly what it is expecting based on title rendered, and that's going to give us this. So let's take a look here. If we do var image URL string and var title. Let's get this under test, and then we'll come back and we'll mess with the structure some more. So let's go back to our test. And say for post in log. I want to print because I want to see. Post image URL. All right, I want to see what we're getting here. Let's take a look. Now our build failed on account of value of type blog post has no member title and no member image URL. Let's go take a look at our blog post. So it does. Let's put those at the top. Make it a little clearer. Let's try again. Ooh, for a value of type blog post. It thinks that we're talking about an array of blog posts. See that? And that's because instead of referencing the whole array in here, we reference the individual. We need to reference the individual objects. So, yeah. All right, let's try it again. Because I want to make sure we're getting what we expect. Now, I'm not going to test the equality of the particular items in here, and the reason for that is that as the blog post updates, or as they publish new posts, I don't want the test to fail, because that's not what we want to make sure is happening. We just want to make sure that the connection is like working. So I do not really want to sift through this. And so this is what we are going to do. We're going to put keywords on there. And then we're going to look in our logs for the keywords. Check it out. A medieval Gaelic word for tattooing, that looks right. And then we have our URL, which also looks good. And then we have the name of that one post, and then we have our URL. So this looks good. Now, one thing that I do want to assert is true is this. Is rather than asserting on each of these, I do want to assert not nil. like so. Now ultimately we may want to do like a default image or something like that, but for now we're just going to make sure that it's always there. We'll come back to that. Cool. All right, so let's make a commit here reflecting what we've done so far. And what we'll do is, I'd like to do this actually in my editor. No, let's do it on the command line. So we have our blog post service, and our blog post service test. Those are all new. We know that. So let's add our changes. And what we're going to say is fetch 3 most recent blog posts from Wordpress API. Nice. All right, so now we want to get those things displayed on the screen, right? And so in order to do that, we need to start connecting up our view to our storyboard. So let me show you what I mean by that. So if we go to our main.storyboard, we have this view controller here. When we go to the identity inspector, it thinks it's called first view controller. So that corresponds to this first view controller, which we're actually going to rename right now to the home view controller. Refactor, rename. Home view controller. And over time, we'll make sure that each of these view controllers reflect names that make sense for what's in them. And it says home view controller. That looks good. So now I need to connect up my 3 blog post previews to my code. Now here, it might make sense for us to do a little refactor of making a blog post preview view, right? So here's how we might do that. Let's make Swift is fine. Blog post preview. Now we're going to import UI kit, and we're going to make a class called blog post preview. It's going to inherit from UI view, like so. Okay. And then we're going to open our main.storyboard with option enter on the right. Yeah, so now I have my image view, and I'm going to control drag that. Well, if it'll let me. I might have to restart Xcode to get this to work properly. What am I doing? There we go. All right, so if I get on my blog post preview and I name this, let me try having it extend UI stack view. Let's try that. That it's happy about. Beautiful. And so now, if we go to, if I go to main.storyboard, and then I open blog post preview on the right, now I should be able to control drag the views to this view here. Let's try with the label. Because those are the two things that I want to put attributes for in my blog post preview. I also have to hop off here in a couple minutes, so what we might actually do is come back to this, and then let's go ahead and commit. What have we done? We just renamed. We renamed one file, and then we added blog post preview. So what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to commit just the rename, because that change is a little bit independent from the other change. So I'm going to add, let's do this actually. Git reset add. So everything should be unstaged, yeah. And then I just want to add that. I want to add this and then the deletion. Like this. There we go. And what I'm going to say is rename first view controller to home view controller to reflect that it controls the home view. Good. All right, that looks good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it here, and then in the next stream we're going to come back and we're going to build that custom view.